Hey guys, it's Dr. Drake 63. I want to thank you for joining me on my channel today. And we're going to talk about this pre-1964, 1959 to be exact, Winchester Model 70 in 30-06. With that beautiful Mauser action. And this particular model, as you saw in the intro, just beautiful all the way around in terms of the stock, the wood grain. Everything about this is just one fine firearm. And I've had real good luck here within this last year in terms of finding good deals and sometimes close to being steals on older firearms that are made the way we used to make them. Lots of quality, lots of hand fitting going into it. Examples of that would be going back chronologically, 1926 Remington Model 8. Also a 37 Model 8, both great firearms. Work great, and they have that classic old school thing going on. 1952 Remington 336 Waffle Top. 35 Remington 336 from the late 60s. Also an Ithaca 12 gauge from the late 60s. So I've had a lot of good fortune that way, and have been able to do that at a minimum of expense going to estate sales. For the most part, between estate sales and making the right kind of friends in the hobby world and a few trades for stuff that I don't like that somebody else likes, I've really come out ahead on that kind of stuff. But anyway, the Remington Model 70 is a firearm that's renowned for being something that before 1964, great rifle, collectible, as good as you could ever get, the American hunting rifle, and afterwards, yeah. We'll talk a little bit about some of the reasons on that, but the main thing is you know, when you're able to pick something like this up, and if you wanted to triple or quadruple your money, that's a pretty good day in our business. And I can tell you that I have no interest in selling this. I'm going to hunt with it this fall. I'm also going to show you some shooting video today where we took first shots with this, and it definitely does what it needs to do as a hunting rifle, without a doubt, and so we'll talk about that as well. Beautiful rifle, the Winchester Model 70, 30-06. So what exactly is the big deal with pre-1964 Winchesters versus post-1964, specifically talking about the Model 70? Well, I've heard all sorts of stuff over the years. I've heard there was a fire at the Winchester factory and all sorts of different theories. But the real issue is they started making them differently. This is an expensive type of firearm to make. It's manually labor intensive. There's a lot of working parts to it. And the biggest change in the difference is the bolt. Let me show you what I'm talking about. If you look closely at this is what's called a Mauser style bolt, and it's called that because it has what's called a controlled feed system. If you look at a Remington 700 bolt, anything like that, it basically advances the round out of the magazine by pushing it forward. Okay, what the Mauser type of bolt system would do would be to grab a hold of that bolt in what's called controlled feeding. So it had a hold of the rim of the cartridge as you advance it forward, and that was deemed to be a better way to control all the variables that are going to increase the speed at which you can work the bolt, accuracy, things like that. But if you look at this particular type of scenario, most locking lug bolts, they don't have this rotation here that you see, and this is the Mauser K98, if you will, design. So basically, when it goes into the chamber, this rotates so that you've got two locking lugs, okay? But as you're out of the chamber, it slides over. And then this is also acting as an extractor claw, but it does grab a hold of the actual round as it's pushing it into your chamber. That's the difference between controlled feed and push feed. So a lot of guys like this kind of bolt better. Everybody's different. I can tell you that what's kind of cool is if you look at it, you always wonder what you got. this serial number right here that's engraved on the bolt does match the receiver on this firearm. So one of the things you always want to look for when you believe you're getting a certain type of firearm is that you're getting one that actually is what it says it is, and that is the case here. So you want to make sure that your locking lugs are like this, in other words 180 from each other when you go to insert this back in, and there you go. And that's all we're talking about right there. Now I'm going to pull the trigger here. I want you guys that get real upset about me pulling a trigger on camera and telling me it's not safe, I want you to know this isn't pointed at anything other than an airplane full of people at this time. Just kidding. This is an adjustable trigger. Right now it's set up, I'm going to call that about a 4-pound pull. Okay, so that was the preference of the original owner. One of the differences between the later models and this model in 59 is this base plate right here and the trigger guard are steel. They're not made out of pot metal or some kind of cast metal. They are steel. And then as you can see right here, this is your release to open up your trap door. So if you have rounds in there, you're done for the day, you haven't fired them, a lot of times what you'll see people do is just cycle each one out, which you kind of have to do with an internal magazine. Here you can just pop open the trap door. And as you see, you have this the followers right here, and this is attached via a spring. So you go out for your day's hunt and say you've had 2 or 3 rounds in there, you don't have to cycle them all the way through. You can just use the trap door. So you see that on a lot of hunting rifles. It either has an internal magazine without a trap door or one with one, but that tends to be the way that the internal magazines go. I mentioned this particular one is outfitted with a fixed 4-power Weaver scope. That's going to work for me out 250 or so before I'm going to want a little bit more magnification. So there is that. I mentioned the serial number. Here you see it upside down, match the number that was on the bolt, and this dates this as a year of manufacture, like I said, is 1959. And a nice knob on there, easy to get a hold of and rotate. So just looking at this again, you look at the beauty of the wood right here. They typically aren't making them like that at the factory anymore, and I can see where that might need a little bit of moisture. And then as you can see off here at the end, it's capped, and not only is that painted different color, but that actually is a different piece of wood that's fitted up right there. I did give a good look-see down this barrel with light, and it's nice and smooth. There's no apparent damage to the crown. You can see it's got this hooded front sight. Some models came with that, I believe. Some did not. I was bragging, I guess, a little bit earlier how this bluing on this barrel is flawless, and it really is. But the only wear you see on this thing, a tiny bit here at the very front of the fore end, a little bit here where the sling attaches to the swivel, and you can see they even have a little recessed portion that was machined into the stock to eliminate having the swivel of a sling tear it up. But all the way up and down the line, this is just a beautiful piece of wood was used to make this stock. Here you go, and you can see this cap is all metal. A beautiful piece of wood was used to make this stock, and you know, again, they don't make them like they used to. Costs too much to make them like they used to. But everything about this rifle is very cool. Could not be happier. What remains is to shoot it. Now, one of the things about the 30-06 round is it's one of the most common rifle rounds you're going to find. Maybe a little bit more 308 out there than this, and you know, maybe in the 223 realm, something like that. But as far as a round that's been around that you can get a lot of diversity in terms of bullet types, whether you want boat tail, whether you want ballistic tip. This right here is Remington Core-Lokt. So these aren't known to be the most ballistic rounds. You typically wouldn't use these for target shooting, but what they do provide is really good expansion. That's my experience with them. And this is typically what I get when I am able to dig a bullet out of a deer. It looks just like that. And certainly with the ballistics coefficient on a 30 caliber bullet, with the wound channel size, things like that, clearly the 30-06 is going to take any game you're going to be after in North America, that's for sure. And that's up to and including those dreaded grizzly bear, and also includes certainly elk and moose and things like that. It's just a great cartridge. If there's a downside to it at all, a knock, it's just that it does not shoot quite as flat as some of the other cartridges, like my favorite hunting cartridge, 270 Winchester. It tends to drop a little bit. Now, as long as you know what you're doing, life's good. You know, you want to take a look at right here, you can kind of see, you know, with a 200-yard zero, you're going to be a couple inches high at 100 and that kind of scenario. So, and then after that, it starts tailing off pretty big time. Once you get out past about 250, you really need to be paying attention to what you're doing in terms of your bullet drop and things like that. Now, I don't hunt out past 250 typically. 300 is going to be about the max for me. But the results that we're going to see today are using Remington Core-Lokt. And I know for a fact there's better ballistic bullets, and if you want to impress people with shooting clover leaves and stuff, this isn't what you're going to get. But I like using this for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's not the most expensive ammo out there. And number two, as I said earlier, I know for a fact that the Core-Lokt is very, very effective against those four-legged critters. So we started out at the 100-yard range. I'm figuring that the fella I bought this from must have had this zeroed, and if not, we're going to find that out pretty quick. But right off the bat, I noticed that it's real easy to load this internal magazine, and that's always a good thing. And you can feel a difference between a push feed type of loading scenario with your bolt as opposed to this control feed. I noticed that before. I had an old Ruger M77 Hawkeye that had a similar type of bolt, the Mauser style controlled feed. But right off the bat, what I did notice is that this trigger is a little bit more of a stronger pull than I would typically go with. I think I mentioned earlier that I thought it was about 4 pounds, and it actually might be closer to 5. I don't know, but we're going to look into making some adjustments, because one of the things you're going to see on my first shots here is that we did push everything a little bit to the right, which is typically, for me, that just means that my trigger's too stiff, and that's how I'm responding to it. One of the things I'm noticing, though, is that for a 30-06, this rifle, which is going to weigh probably close to 9 pounds with this scope on it, there's no really felt recoil compared to some I've shot in 30-06. I mean, that's a round that can give you a bruise on the shoulder and so forth, and I just didn't have that. Was real impressed with the way this shot. So here's my first 3 shots from 100 yards, not bore-sighted or anything else. And I'm definitely knowing from the trigger pull that I'm pushing it a little bit to the right, but mostly needs an adjustment. But you know, as you can see right here, this is about, looking at it, about a 2-inch group, which we'd certainly like to shoot that smaller. So this is after an adjustment. The one you see on the extreme left was a little bit of an over adjustment. So I did readjust after that shot, and there's my next 2. So I definitely can see that if I do what I need to do, that this rifle is certainly capable of some sub-MOA shooting. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And who knows what it could do if we find some ammo we like a little bit better, or that it likes, I should say. Who knows what it's capable of doing, but that certainly is some nice hunting shooting. So just kind of re-chronicling what we did. Our first 3 shots were these guys right here at 100 yards. That was before we did any kind of tweaking at all with the scope, okay? And this isn't particularly impressive. I was getting used to the trigger, which I find to be a little more stiff than I'd like, which it is an adjustable trigger. But these are my next 3 shots after an adjustment. So I took these 3 and said, let's click it over. I got that result, made my final adjustment, then shot these 2. I then shot this group right here, which is not impressive at all. Well, at this point, the barrel's getting kind of warm, without a doubt. However, I shot this freehand. Okay, so what's the name of the game here? All of these are taking out the deer, without a doubt. But your ones you see to the right, these have more to do with the shooter than anything else. And after the corrections were made, like I said, taking our time off a sandbag, you know, you've got a nice little 1 MOA or whatever kind of group. This was, like I said, part of a second group that I shot. Barrel's getting pretty warm about that time. And on a hunting rifle, that's something that you have to take into account. I'll take that result freehand any day, by the way, guys. Okay, so like I said, this has been a good year. Picked up this beautiful Remington Model 8 autoloader from 1926, long before, as people nowadays say, Remington sucked. Picked up this nice waffle top 336 from Marlin from 1952, long before Remington bought them and, according to some people, made them suck. And today, maybe in the best shape out of all of them, certainly love the stock, this Winchester Pre-64 Model 70, before Winchester sucked, or so say some people. But they certainly don't make rifles that look like these, that feel like these anymore. The big difference is, I can take this new rifle out, somewhat of a budget rifle, which is very accurate. You've seen it talked about plenty. The 783, and I can bang this thing against a tree, scratch the barrel, any number of things, and I'm not going to shed a tear. I'm going to hunt with these guys, without a doubt. Well, I'm going to be pretty careful not to bang them into a tree. Beautiful firearms. It's okay if they do show some badges of honor from successful hunts, I will say that. I appreciate you watching today. This is Dr. Drake 63. Saying happy hunting, guys.